Hey, my wonderful, lovely people, a pleasant afternoon to you. You know, um, I was having a conversation today. Somebody was sharing with me of a constable who had gotten rid of his girlfriend or whomever it may be. I don't know if the story is true. So the conversation kind of segue into, men who beat women, physically beat women, who physically abuse them. And sometimes some of us, because it's not all, some of us women who have never experienced such, you know, physical abuse, I've never experienced it. Some of us, we have never experienced it, despite what people may think. We tend to come to judgments, on false premises or something that we hypothesize, that we think. So she's beaten up, and we think from the mere fact her body is being damaged, she should up and leave. And naturally, anybody, a well-thinking person, yes, would say that, and that would be the best option to save her life, because this is something that can take away her life. Because this is something that can actually take away her life. But somebody else said to me, but Toni, and you have to look at the parameters, you have to look at the factors that are in place. They didn't go into depth, but I started to think, what if she doesn't have family members or friends or even an associate to go to? She has no home. She lives with a man. He's a breadwinner. He's a caretaker of her financially. She doesn't have the wherewithal. What does she do in a case like this? Worse yet, if children are involved, and he is the man taking care of her and taking care of the children financially, because finance is a big portion of the pie. Finance is a big portion of that pie. Some people may say 60, some may say 80. It's a big portion. Finances, it's a big, takes care of so many different things. And as a result of that, it may be unfair of us to say, is she an idiot? Or ask the question, is she an idiot? Why doesn't she leave? People, it's really easier said than done. When they said that, I said, when I'm thinking about it, I said, that's a fair point, because when you literally have nowhere to go, it's not easy to say you're going to just walk on the road. And again, if children are involved, you can't just up and walk away like that with kids. You have to have a plan. And I would never by any means necessary. I was saying to them, I couldn't stay with a man who physically beats, because my pain threshold is very low. I can't take physical pain. People, if may have a stomach ache, belly ache, what them call it, or even headache, I can't take the pain. I start to wiggle up myself like picnic, and I moan and groan like picnic, big picnic maybe. And I have to find some way of relieving myself of that pain. I can't take it. I literally have a low threshold for it. Plus it's a soft but large. I get buff up and buff up, butter bruise up. No, sir. Me can't take lick. And I not going to try fight a man, because women generally cannot fight men. That's a big part and parcel why men will feel comfortable abusing a woman. You know what I mean? Because he knows that she's not strong as he is, physically, that is. For the most part, he's not. And I don't encourage women to do it. You cannot fight him. 9.5 out of 10 times you will lose if you're going to a physical match. The man is just made physically stronger. You just have to accept that. So, sometimes as women, we have to be very careful to ask the question or questions. Is she an idiot? Why doesn't she leave? Are you going to put her up? Are you going to put the children up? Because oftentimes children are involved. She has to somehow make a plan. You know what I mean? And get out. She may have to really use a lot of wisdom and wit and craft and a cunning way. Sounds bad, but to find a way for the beatings to lessen, to mitigate. But, you probably cannot or should not, let me use that word, or, posit some questions that are filled without understanding. These are questions that shows that there is no understanding, and that's natural, because if you have never been physically abused, then you can never understand. You can only empathize, sympathize, you can only imagine and say, I know I can't, I don't have to go through anything. you know. And just off the bat, I can tell you, I would have to leave because I can't take it. I would cry. I would probably be hospitalized on the first go. And I'm out, and I'm not going to watch my cells and my skin and my body deteriorate like that. You understand? I'd have to find somebody, because I don't know. Walk until me find somebody I don't know. So I know. I personally couldn't stay in a situation like that. But you know what? I'm not going to be one. I'm not going to. Maybe when I was much, much younger, as a early 20-year-old or in my 20s, I would probably utter, you know, things like that to say, you know, is she crazy? Why would you stay and take the physical? Because I'm using how I can't manage it to say the other woman can't. And it's not that the women can manage it, you know. When she looks at, and she said, if I walk out of here, where I walk out on the streets, where I can be molested, you know, harassed, you know. Sorry, people, itching me a little. Where I can be harassed or molested or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? What do you say? Where am I going to get money from if I feel hungry? And then you watch yourself become like the beggars on the road, and the, you know, like a scavenger sort of a thing, searching. Can you find yourself when you get so hungry, rummaging through the garbage? Can you imagine? When she measures the challenges, as horrible as the challenge is of the beating and what it can do to her physically and take her life out, she prefers to stay with that challenge until better comes. You know, sometimes I suspect that is why some women develop all of these heinous illnesses and diseases, you know, that takes them out because of the battering and the bruising to the cells, to the body, to the muscles, to the tissue, to the bone, to the skin, because you're not made to be battered. You see how we are frail and fragile? You see how frail and fragile we are? You know, so we have to be careful in how we pass these unfounded judgment calls, because they're without compassion, they're without mercy, they're without even facts, because your situation may be different. You probably can walk away on the go because you probably can manage to go on the road until you make it. You probably have an auntie or an uncle or a cousin or two or a friend and foe to call on. They may not literally have anybody. And again, if little children are involved, what do? You can have them starving and out of school and stuff. I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And that's a very sad reality. That's a very, very sad reality. And we live in a very narcissistic world with quite a number of narcissistic people. You know, unfortunately, women tend to get a bad end of the stick in terms of, as it relates to the entire relationship. You know, I don't know, because we're so emotional, you know, they tend to get the bad end of the stick. Don't worry though, you know, the men tend to suffer badly. If you look at the hospices, you know, oh Lord have his mercy. You know, the piper came to be paid, and most of these men are paying the piper now in these hospices. I mean, when you go there, you just look on and you say, yeah man, I can just imagine what you did to Mary, to Jackie, and to Sue. Yeah, it's a reality. People think it's a joke. So their day tends to come in, but it comes in a different way. It's just that I find that women tend to go through the emotional trauma more, you know, because of how they're wired and the investments that they would have made, and to know that now you have this man who should be a protector and a provider. He's now a hindrance, you know, an abuser, and it becomes very problematic. And that is why you see, you know, maybe the laws of the land is really fearful in releasing like the sex offenders and these pedophiles and these abusers, because some people would be surprised to know who fall under that. Can you imagine? So I don't put a Tama, Dika, Harry, Jill, or Jane on a pedestal. I'll give you your respect. The Bible says we must owe no man nothing but respect. I'll give you what God says I ought to give to you, you know, but nothing else. But anyway, you know, it's imperative for us as women especially, and people, to show empathy and mercy, because it's not as easy as you think for them to walk away. It's not. And you know, it is what it is. Anyway, guys, You know what to do with TikTok and YouTube. Subscribe. Give me one of those lines and you can follow me on Instagram.